Well, welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump may soon recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and move the U.S. Embassy to the Holy City. This is just one of the important issues CBN's David Brody talked about with Vice President Mike Pence in an exclusive interview.
The vice president also discussed the wave of sexual harassment scandals and whether or not Congress will be able to get tax reform done by Christmas. Here's part one of David's interview.
As he walked into the picturesque library at the U.S. Naval Observatory, we had quite a bit to ask the vice president. One huge topic, Israel. Specifically, would the president move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? He promised during the campaign to do so, but has held off. Senior White House sources tell CBN News discussions are underway to figure out a way to do it. In the meantime, there are now reports that initially the president could announce the U.S. will recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital city.
But the president and I believe that the relationship between the American people and the people of Israel is one that is timeless. I mean, literally before the founding of this country, there were Americans who prayed for and dreamed of Israel returning to its ancient homeland. And through the tragedy and tragic events of World War II and the Holocaust, and through strong American leadership at the United Nations, Israel was restored to her homeland, as the old book says, in a day, in a moment. And I know the president is reflecting on the decision about our embassy and other policies, but it's all informed by his commitment to the relationship between the United States and Israel, and his knowledge that the American people cherish our ally Israel, and we always will.
All of this will grow even larger when the VP heads to Israel and Egypt later this month.
If the world knows nothing else, the world should know this. Under President Donald Trump, America stands with Israel. And we'll be delivering that strong message. It was 70 years ago that the nation of Israel, in a miracle of history, came back into existence in its ancient homeland, and every day Americans have cherished that accomplishment, and we'll be there to celebrate that. But as we travel through the region as well, we'll also reaffirm our commitment to peace in the region. The president's made it clear that we want peace, but people should know that President Donald Trump will never compromise the safety and security of the Jewish state of Israel in the midst of that process. I'll also be traveling to Egypt, where we'll be talking about the issue of persecuted Christians and religious minorities across the wider Arab world. I couldn't be more proud of the fact that in the wake of seeing half of the Christian population flee from Syria, 80% of the Christian population has now left Iraq, that President Trump made the decision to now begin to funnel U.S. support, not through the United Nations in every program, but for the first time directly through USAID to help rebuild Christian communities and the communities of other religious minorities that have for too long been neglected.
Will that start soon?
We're hoping to make announcements during my trip through the region, David.
Here at home, the issue of sexual harassment has gripped the nation. It's something the vice president hasn't really discussed at length publicly, at least until now.
So many people want to know, what's the solution? What's the answer? Where's the morality in all of this in terms of what can be done? Do you legislate it? Is it a cultural issue? What are some, can you help folks with some answers here about what's been, light has been shined on this topic, on this very important issue?
Well, as vice president and as the father of two really talented and wonderful young women, I think we're seeing real progress in our society today. Every American woman is entitled to a safe and productive workplace. And my heart goes out to the women who have endured sexual harassment in the workplace, and I admire their willingness and their courage in coming forward. But I think it's initiating a national conversation about practices in our businesses and in our public institutions that will make sure that women and men have the kind of work environment that is safe and respectful to all concerned. And I think the President and I both see that as progress.
What do you make exactly of, and you're not one to take a victory lap, but you got beat up on, they called it the Pence rule, and then Billy Graham even before that, just this idea of making sure you're taking the proper steps to not have perception, and the perception becoming reality. What is your view of that? Because you got beat up in the media pretty well for that.
Well, God's greatest blessing in my life is my wife, Karen. And look, every marriage is different. And when we got married 32 years ago, we sat down and talked to one another about guidelines. And we live those out in our life, and they've been a blessing to us. And I have to tell you, criticism comes with the job, and we accept that. But I've been very moved over the last few months by how many people have stopped me as I've traveled around this country and given me a word of encouragement and expressed support for our decision to put our marriage and our family first. And I'm always blessed by that. I really am, David.
Legislatively, the big issue on the table is tax reform, and there is a big question to be answered.
The tax reform, is it going to be in the Christmas stocking stuffer? Is this going to get done by Christmas? What's the prediction?
Well, we believe it will. President Trump and I have been working literally around the clock with members of the Senate, and before that with members of the House of Representatives. And we really believe that before Christmas comes, we're going to deliver to the American people the largest tax cut in American history. And as the President has said, it's going to be a middle-class miracle. This is tax relief that's going to benefit working families across this country with real and immediate tax relief. The average American family will have more than $1,200 in their pockets when this passes. But more than that, we're going to reform our business taxes in this country so that companies large and small can begin to compete with companies around the world again. And that'll create jobs. And we also know that by reducing taxes on businesses, we'll see wages rise in this country. And so we're very close. We're going to continue to work closely with members of the Senate to move legislation this week. Then it'll be off to what's called a conference committee to work out the differences. But we really do believe that, as the President said just yesterday, that the American people are going to get a great Christmas present this year, and it's going to be a big, beautiful tax cut that'll benefit their families and benefit this growing American economy.
Speaking of that economy, what about the concern about the deficit? Jeff Flake, Bob Corker, friends of yours who say, hey, wait a minute here, we hope the economy keeps humming, but is there going to be some sort of trigger mechanism that they want to raise rates if the economy doesn't continue to hum?
We respect the fact that members of Congress want to make sure that 5 or 6 years down the road, if unforeseen circumstances cause a downturn in the economy, that we make sure and not add a burden of debt to our children and grandchildren. But I think from the President on down, we really do believe that by allowing Americans to keep more of what they earn, allowing businesses to be able to reinvest in ways that will create jobs and opportunities, that we're not only not going to see deficits from these tax cuts, but when they're all fully implemented, we think you're going to see not only incomes rise in this country, our economy grow, but you're also going to see the federal government have even more resources to provide for our military, to meet the obligations that we've made to people through all the various programs. And we think this is really all about growth, and it's going to result in a growing economy.
David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
That was an exclusive interview. You can see part 2 with the Vice President on Monday's 700 Club. They're going to be talking about how evangelical Christians have access to the Trump administration. And we'll take a look at the President's own faith. And they'll look back at the Trump administration's first year in office. You can also see excerpts from the interview on cbnnews.com. And the breaking news out of this is moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. My prediction on it, and this is coming from Chris Mitchell as well out of our Jerusalem Bureau, is President Trump will not sign the security waiver. back in 1995 when Congress passed a bill requiring the administration to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and put in a security exemption, that if it wasn't in the security interest of the United States to move it, the president could every 6 months sign a security waiver. So what looks like is going to happen is President Trump will not sign that security waiver today, and then will appoint a group to oversee the transition and the timing of the transition. So hold on to your hats. It's going to get very interesting in the Arab world over the next few days.